There, good,
Yeah, I've done record to cloud.
great.
All right. Well, good evening once again, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Prince William Committee of 100, we want to welcome each and every one of you. Thank you for being with us tonight. A special welcome to business and community leaders who are joining us tonight, and a special welcome as well to Committee of 100 members. We're glad to have you with us tonight. We're really excited about this forum tonight because it brings to the forefront a topic that there is much discussion about, and we're happy to be able to bring it to the Prince William County community. As you know, this is one of the most controversial topics, and we love it for that reason, because you're going to hear perspectives from speakers who support the further development of data centers, and you're going to hear perspectives from speakers who do not. As you may know, with the Committee of 100, it is not our goal to persuade you one way or another. Our goal is to present you with the most current information from people who, in many respects, are experts on the subject and who can offer the perspective that you need to expand your knowledge of a topic, and even decide where you fall out on the topic. But it is not our desire to convince you one way or another. It's our desire to bring you the latest, most current information through the best speakers with the most expertise that we can find. Arguably, the Committee of 100 is one of the best organizations in this county, providing highest quality forums and debates to our residents. As always, we invite you to join our membership, and we ask you to do that by sending your $40 check to Post Office Box 1415, Manassas, Virginia 20108. And let me just say, we're very, very excited that as late as tonight, we understand that Mr. Tim Kistler, one of our panelists, has signed up for membership, and our own Supervisor Victor Angry has also signed up for membership with the Committee of 100. We are just delighted about that. Please note, this session will be recorded, and it will be you will be able to find it on our website. Not sure exactly the date. Give us a day or so to clean it up, but it will be available to those of you that would like to have it. And now I would like to introduce our moderator for the evening. That would be Denny Doherty, the one and only. So Denny grew up in Louisiana and received both his undergrad and graduate degrees from the University of Louisiana. Denny and his family have resided in the Brentsville district for the past 35 years. He is currently serving as attorney for the U.S. Department of Interior. Denny has been a long time and faithful member and leader with the Committee of 100. He served not once, but twice as president, and currently serves as our program chairman. As such, he has a pivotal role in coordinating programs such as tonight. Denny plans to retire soon, and I take that to mean that he will be available then to do many more things with the Committee of 100. And with that, Denny, I'd like to turn the program over to you.
We'll have to discuss that some more, but thank you for the opportunity to moderate this evening's very important program on an issue that is on everybody's mind, at least in.
Can you increase your volume, Denny?
I can make an effort to do that. It looks like I'm at the max. There must be a better way, but I'm not aware of it. I will try to speak louder.
Okay.
Hope that the mic can magnify my loud voice. We are privileged tonight to have 4 outstanding panelists. I'm going to introduce them one at a time as they so that they can up and share their their perspective on the issue, starting with Supervisor Victor Angry. Can't argue with the alphabet. Angry comes first. Victor and his wife have been married for more than 29 years. They moved to Dale City in 2003 and raised 2 children there. During most of his career, he was with the U.S. Army. He joined the Army immediately after graduating from Lyman High School in Altamonte, Florida. He was in the Army finished as a command sergeant major. He was a command sergeant major for the entire National Guard. And he also has the distinction of being the first African American to hold that position. He's an active member of the volunteer fire department, has been since 2011. He's on their board of directors. He is in a business that he calls A is for Angry, LLC. And I imagine we might hear some more about that. He's also representative of the Prince William County Board of Supervisors on numerous regional and state boards and commissions, including he is the Prince William County representative to the National Association of Counties. So Supervisor Angry, if you could give us your perspective on this. Let me ask a question that I was asked to ask to each of the panelists, and that is, if you have a interest that will be affected by the decision where we are discussing tonight. It did not was not discussed in my introduction. Please draw our attention.
I want to apologize, Danny, but is it possible for everybody to like mute, and then, because while you were talking, I couldn't hear you. And so I hate to ask you to repeat what you just said, but I couldn't hear you. There was some noise in the background.
Well, most of the time I was talking about your illustrious career.
I did hear that part.
With which you are very familiar. But the question I asked, because we had a question come in from our audience, was, do you have any financial interest that it would be useful for our audience to be aware of as they assess your comments this evening?
Okay, you said financial interest?
Yes, sir.
I think
tonight, are you going to retire and
yeah.
Turn to investments for the rest of your life?
I think that's a great question. I can answer that real quick. So the A is for Angry, because you want to know that. So in the military, when at Sergeant Major Academy, I had a bunch of Sergeant Majors. They'd always come up to me. This one particular fellow would say, A is for Angry. And one thing you can do with your name is really make that a business, an LLC yourself. So I took that and LLC myself coming out of the military because of my leadership experience. And I started a leadership company and called it A is for Angry LLC. Wrote a book, traveled around, did some speaking engagement, a lot of motivational speaking, and that kind of sparked that. So when I created that, it was a path that I wanted to take. But I also became a volunteer firefighter with Dale City Volunteer Fire Department. And when this opportunity presented itself for me to be in this position now, what I put on the shelf was my business. So I got away from leadership and my focus of my book and really doing all that, because this, although they labeled it as a part-time job, it's a full-time commitment. And I committed to doing this full-time. And I'm in a position that I could do that, maybe not comfortably, but I could do this because it's really for what I feel of what I've been doing for the last 23 years, public service, and for the best of the community. So I put that on the shelf. So when we talk about, like what will I do after this? The only thing I want to do when I finish this path is get back into really continuing, creating inspiration, motivation, and sharing what people have done for me, paying it forward with the opportunity to be your greatest self you can be for the greater good of the people. I hope that answers that question. I'm sorry, you're muted, sir.
This is your opening statement, so please tell us what you think about data centers.
Yeah, so I will, and thank you. And I want to start by saying first to Miss Cynthia, Madam President, that I am not just a new member to C100. I am renewing my membership. That gives me a little bit more credence than Mr. Tim Kistler. I just want to say that.
That's weak. That's really weak.
sorry, man. I got to go there because I'm not new. I just got to renew. And so thank you for reminding me to renew because we did that and we're going to do that. And it's a done deal. But listen, one of the things that for me as 1/8, and I will start by saying I am 1/8 of the Prince William County Board of Supervisors, meaning that the dais represents how we move forward in this county. I put forth my ideas and my thoughts on moving this county forward. And that was that we needed to increase our commercial tax base. And in doing so, you will recall that in 2020, we hired one of, and in my personal opinion, greatest economic development directors in the Commonwealth of Virginia, which is Christina Wynn, who came to us from Arlington after landing the Amazon or the Amazon opportunity that is really swept more than just that area, but is a Northern Virginia opportunity. We have created many opportunities based on what is happening in the build out north of us. And in doing that, one of the things that she put forward was a concept that we had said was we need to create an opportunity to bring to the county more commercial businesses and big businesses. So we set out to make a targeted industry, and that was data centers. And she's good at that. And so she brought to us the targeted industry of data centers. Now, you'll also recall that, I don't know how many months ago, this year, or maybe even at the end of last year, I was the one that gave the directive, and it had some discussion, got a little modified, to really look at the data center overlay district and the opportunity of creating that in corridors that were more than just what was originally at the time in places where infrastructure and the wiring existed. So I want to look at opportunities where maybe we didn't have infrastructure, but we had the electricity or the capacity, which meant countywide. Now, Supervisor Bodie made that a countywide directive, and we looked at the entire sense of the county. But coming back to that, we had this opportunity of the Pageland Corridor, which in 2012 was a Dominion Power created structure coming through that gateway or that lane that literally feeds Loudoun County. So for me, it was a simple, easy opportunity, if you will, to look at that because, I didn't bring to the table if that was going to be it, but it came back to us as that those property owners want to look at that opportunity for them to be that gateway. So that became a let's look at it. Now, that doesn't mean this board is looking at it. We have a staff of personnel that are more than qualified, and we pay great finances of taxpayers' dollars to be experts in their fields. And we set them out to look and see if this is that opportunity. That hasn't come back to this board yet, but when it does, then we will simply look at it. But for me, it is really the opportunity of how do we get away from always having this problem that we're having right now in this budget season we're having with raising residential taxes, and how do we look at making that not the priority because we're at 70% plus of that being how we bring finances into this county for the services that we provide. And how do we get that to be on a commercial tax base that really helps offset and lower that to be that? Now, it's going to take some work. So that's the opportunity that I see and want to present, to how do we make that a reality or make that a whatever we're going to, how do we adjust to that and make it work?
You're on mute.
Can you indicate to us when you expect this matter to come for a decision before your board?
Yeah, and I will tell you this, just to indicate to you, one of the things this board is not doing is pushing staff to get this done. So we want them to do everything to make sure they cover every corner, to make sure they work with every, expert in the field, be that from water to electricity to, agricultural to whatever all of that is. And even these data center experts, we have not put pressure on them to bring that back to us. I am told that that may be June, July timeframe. I don't know if that stands. Again, I don't want to set that expectation if they need the required time to do what they need to do. But I will assure you that all of as this being the hottest topic around, most of that discussion, and excuse me, I'm sorry, I have a motion light. And so my light reminds me that I'm not dead. And so, but I will assure this panel and those listening that this board is not pressuring, pushing our staff to give us these results. We need this to be done the right way. As a military leader, this is one thing that we need to have, which is all of the, information to make the best decision that we need to move forward. So I can tell you, I'm hearing, and that's only because of newspapers and the group, because I don't call staff and ask them. I just expect that they'll bring this back to us at some point. But I'm hearing that that's sometime in the summer, July, August timeframe. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Now to turn to another public official who, like you, Supervisor Angry, is speaking for himself and not the Haymarket Town Council. But I want to call upon Bob Weir. Bob is an Army brat. That's his description. Born in Germany. He's resided in Virginia for the majority of his life and graduated from the University of Virginia with a bachelor's degree in history. He's worked for 34 years at a small consulting firm specializing in intellectual property and food labeling. He moved to Haymarket from Fairfax County in 2000. He has been on the Haymarket Town Council for 10 years. He was on the Haymarket Planning Commission for 12 years. He served in a number of other roles on budget committees and so forth. And Bob will be bringing to us his perspective as a resident of the area that is most affected by these decisions. I would think the western portion of Prince William County. Bob, if you don't have any financial interest to declare, you can just skip that question and move on to the substance of your remarks. But if you have confessions to make, we will hear them.
Denny, I'm no saint, but I do thank the committee for inviting me to this. No, I don't have any financial interest in any of this or anything associated with it. To me, it's an issue of land use and infrastructure. As most are aware, the issue of data centers really didn't crop up until about 6 or 7 years ago with the Amazon project out in Haymarket and then the associated power line fight. And I was part of that fight for 4.5 years to get the hybrid line constructed as a compromise with Dominion. Shortly after that, the overlay zone was created. I worked hand in hand with the planning director at the time to both draft the language of the text and the accompanying map that was then revised 2 years later. At that point in time, the people that were drawn together to create that map and determine where it was a good idea and where it wasn't was a widespread group of all interests. It was Dominion Power, it was the data center industry, it was the Chamber of Commerce, it was the Northern Virginia Technology Council, all of the community groups, a variety of residents, that sort of thing. So it was a comprehensive effort by a lot of people, and everybody got a little bit of stuff they didn't like, and they got some stuff they did like, and that's the nature of a compromise. I can say this though, in all the years that I've been watching Prince William County and dealing with land use applications, I've never encountered a more piecemeal and fractured process than what we're doing right now. On the one hand, we've got a comprehensive plan that's being revised, and in that are what are quote unquote small comprehensive plan amendments of whose statutory authority for that I really question. You've got the revision of the overlay district. Then you've got the elephant in the room, which is the PW Digital Gateway. And none of these are being considered comprehensively. They're all being considered apart. And that's not the way you do land use planning, and that really concerns me. You can't revise the overlay without considering the comp plan. You can't consider a CPA without considering the comp plan and how it fits into the overlay. There should be some comprehensive review of this, and the things should all be tied together, and that's not happening. I think what's of even greater concern, though, is with all of these applications, be it the comp plan, the overlay, or the digital gateway, over the past 6 to 8 months, I've seen very little effort by the county to actively engage the citizenry or the impacted people. I mean, they've held a bunch of listening sessions. They haven't provided any input or feedback. You know, how are the county's residents, county's taxpayers supposed to comment cogently on these issues if they don't have anything to comment on from the staff? There have been some wild assertions made over the last couple of months with respect to potential land or potential revenues, land availability, transportation impacts, what can be proffered, what can't be proffered, what the impacts are going to be. And quite frankly, I've been doing land use in this county for 20 years, and I've voted on a lot of land use, and I've reviewed a lot of land use applications, both at the town and the county level. Let me tell you, a lot of what's out there are quite frankly half-truths or just outright falsehoods. I can't say it any more kindly than that. You know, I'm sort of at a loss at this point because it doesn't seem that there's any real structure to what's going on. You know, I've got a keen understanding of the infrastructure out here, especially when it comes to power. And there are a lot of assertions with respect to how much power is available on the line that runs through the battlefield, how much power is available on the hybrid line through Haymarket. And there are quite a few assertions by quote unquote professionals, especially some engineers from the data centers, that are absolutely refuted by Dominion. Refuted not just by their executives, but by their chief load engineer. I sat down for 2 hours with them. So, I mean, that's a concern. And I think before anybody makes a definitive decision on any of this stuff, somebody needs to look at the comprehensive implications of it. And there has to be an order of operations. Comp plan first, overlay second, and then the follow-on applications to ensure that they comply with both the comp plan and the overlay, because if they don't comport with the overlay, then you've got to go through the additional steps of the SUP. And I hope that somebody out there is listening at the county level and gets their ducks in a row and their house back in order.
You want to explain what a SUP refers to? Special
Use permit, which is required for any data center outside of the overlay district.
Thank you very much, Bob. That was certainly gave us a little different perspective on things. Next, would like to call on Tim Kistler. Tim comes to us from, let me get my information in front of me. He is with the firm of, Tim, help me while I'm looking here.
Castle Rock Partners.
Castle Rock Partners. So Tim is very much involved in real estate development. He's been doing that for 39 years. He has encouraged the financing, development, and construction of more than $2 billion in real estate development. These projects include mixed use, retail, entertainment, residential, office, and 15 million square feet of industrial projects. Right now, he's involved with bringing on the University Village at Innovation, a 1.6 million square foot mixed use project in Prince William County, which will begin this year with a 300 unit residential building providing housing on the George Mason campus. Tim, if you want to say anything about your financial interests, you're welcome to do so. And then we'd like to hear your perspective on the issue before us.
Super. Thank you very much for the intro and for your time. And yes, not only am I an evil real estate developer, but I am in I'm a resident of the Pageland study area. I live in the same community as Supervisor Canlon, and was involved in his disqualification. So yes, we're part of the whole submission. My wife and I have a small horse farm in right off of Pageland. My bio talks mostly about real estate development, but I did want to say, since I read the other bios, I did grow up for much of my life in Prince William County. I went to Ripon Middle School and Woodbridge Senior High School. I am the head of the Woodbridge Senior High School Alumni Scholarship Fund, and we have award $1,500 grants to several students every year coming out of Woodbridge High School, and it's a lot of fun. As I said, my wife and I live in the Digital Gateway study area, and we have a horse farm, and we love the area, but it has changed, particularly with the advent of the quarry over on Gumstream Road, just over the Loudoun County line. You can treat Pageland as a rural area, but I tell you, you do so at your personal peril. If you try to pull out onto Pageland pulling a 4-horse trailer and try not to jostle the horses, you're going to get abused by the traffic. I've had it happen several times. That's just a fact. I mean, Pageland has certainly changed. I do have some data center developments in Southwest Virginia, not in Prince William County. And I've done a lot of industrial development starting in 1983. In that time frame, development practices and design practices have changed dramatically. One significant area is stormwater management. And in that, if you've been following along with all of the listening sessions that Mr. Weir mentioned, stormwater management is one of the hot topics. I mean, it used to be, when I first got out of college, I went to Virginia Tech and was a civil engineer, started as a civil engineer. We would collect the rainwater and put it in a pipe and shoot it on down to the downstream neighbor. That was found to increase the rate of flow downstream, caused flooding, caused erosion. So new rules were implemented across the whole country. Then what happened is that as the engineers learned more and more about stormwater management control, regulations would get added on. In 2014, Virginia DEQ implemented new stormwater management and best management practices regulations that basically made it so that you had to increase detention requirements and increase the amount of sediment that you take out of the stormwater before you can release it. It used to be that you could, the 2009 regulations, you had to treat everything as if you could not increase the rate of flow on your downstream neighbors. Now you have to treat your site as if it's a fully wooded site, even if it's not. And you have to release at that rate as if it was a fully forested site. We have to study the 10-year storms. We have to look at the 100-year storm. Virginia has strong stormwater management regulations. And as a developer, I can say that we spend millions building the facilities and millions on the design of these things. So when it's said that the data center development will increase downstream runoff, in my view, and I think in the view of all the engineers that I hire, it's patently false. Another argument against data centers is that it will suck water out of the Octagon watershed. Now, I'll tell you that in the study area, everybody who lives there is on well and septic. I have 2 wells. Some of my neighbors have 3 wells. That's a lot of wells in that 2,000 area, subject area, study area. If developed, the water would come from the Prince William County Service Authority. And that water source would be the Corvallis water treatment plant in Herndon, which draws out of the Potomac, not the Octagon. So, that basically what we're saying is that we take wells off of the Octagon watershed and we get water from the Potomac watershed. Sewage would be treated at the UOSA plant in Fairfax. So basically doesn't affect that wouldn't affect any of our streams. Another big traffic issue that you hear about in the listening sessions is traffic. One of the greatest things about data centers is that once they're completed, they're extremely low generators of traffic. They house very few employees. Data centers are good from a traffic concern. Another good aspect of data centers is their minimal impact on K through 12 schools. Data centers have zero impact on the number of kids in schools because they basically generate no kids. However, data centers do have a significant impact on schools in another way. The value of the real estate of a finished data center is roughly, the valuation is roughly $1,000 per square foot. So that's what the basis of the tax assessor would apply the mill rate to. It's estimated that upon completion of the whole PW Digital Gateway assemblage, that the annual tax generated at the current tax rates would be roughly $400 million per year. Of that, roughly $230 million would go to the Prince William County schools. Having watched the budgeting session at PW schools lately, I think that they would really appreciate having that income stream. Going back to when I was at Woodbridge, we're on year-round school back in I graduated in 79. And it was because Prince William schools were overwhelmed. And so year-round school meant that you did 45 days and then you're off for 15 days. And so they separated us into 5 groups. And at any given time, 1/5 of the student population was on break. And the schools were still overcrowded. Certainly, that was a horrible period of time for Prince William schools. And I think that they would really look at the data center influx of revenue as a positive thing. And those taxes didn't include the BPOL taxes, which is the tax on the electronic guts inside of a data center. Granted, that's personal property and it is depreciated by the data center companies over the life of the electronic equipment. But the good thing is that about every 3 to 5 years, they rip it all out and put new in. So it restarts the cycle of the BPOL taxes. I think that a significant factor for Supervisor Angry and the rest of the supervisors is going to be analyzing the data centers and also looking at it as the diversification of the county's tax base. Data centers, in my view, are one of the best available tools for generating taxes without impacting traffic, schools, and certainly many aspects of the environment. Keep in mind, the study area is virtually all land in cultivation. So if there's a tree on it now, it's probably staying because it's in slope or it's in riparian area. So anyway, I think the data centers are good for the county and all of its 430,000 residents. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Tim. Cynthia, we're going to be, after Mr. Wright, we're going to be moving to questions and answers. Do we have a organized system of notifying the panelists when their time is running out? Okay, well, I will be looking for a signal from you, Cynthia, to tell me that we are approaching our limits. Our next panelist is Bill Wright, and Bill is currently a resident, as I understand it, of the Heritage Hunt area. He's a native of Garden City, New York, where he graduated from Pace University with a bachelor's business administration and a degree in economics. He served as a naval surface warfare officer for 25 years, retiring with the rank of captain. He then spent 18 years as an analyst for the Department of Homeland Security before retiring in December 2019 as a federal civilian. He moved to Prince William County immediately upon his retirement, and he's been rather vocal on the issue before us. Bill, if you have any financial interest to disclose, please do so. If not, tell us what you think about more data centers.
Okay, Denny, no, I have no financial interest one way or the other in data centers. And before I've got some prepared remarks because I don't have the background of some of these other speakers, so I've got to write stuff down so I remember it. But before I get started, we're talking about, I think Bob and I are both talking about the location of data centers, not data centers or no data centers, but the most appropriate place to site them. So I'm not an elected official, developer, or political activist. I'm not a longtime resident of Prince William County. I moved here, as you noted, from Fairfax County in January of 2020. I knew almost nothing about this topic before last November, but I've learned a lot since, and I've prepared some remarks to share what I've learned with you. So my first awareness of the Prince William Digital Gateway proposal was when I attended Supervisor Pete Candlin's town hall meeting in Heritage Hunt Clubhouse on August 12th. Although he stated his strong opposition to the proposal, he also said he expected it to be approved and suggested our residents should focus on mitigation strategies. It wasn't until November 4th that another community meeting was held by the Coalition to Protect Prince William County, the Prince William Conservation Alliance, and the National Parks Conservation Association. My partner for this evening, Bob Weir, was an active participant in that meeting. These were the true leaders who energized the opposition. My first email to the county supervisors on November 5th, I asked the question I am still trying to get a straight answer to. What is the compelling reason to rezone rural areas for data centers rather than place them in industrial zoned areas specifically set aside for them? On November 19th, I received a reply from Chair Ann Wheeler, who told me there was not sufficient room in the overlay district. I was skeptical, so I began digging and became quite familiar with county land records. I first addressed the Board of County Supervisors on November 23rd, armed with the data I had collected from county websites, and challenged the assertions made about land availability. I offered supervisors a tour of the Gainesville district to see available land for themselves. As a matter of fact, Supervisor Angry was the first one to take me up on that tour, and we had a very enjoyable tour on December 5th. I started writing other elected officials, and my first breakthrough came when Delegate Danica Rome telephoned me on November 29th and was clearly sympathetic with my position. I asked her if she would consider stating her views publicly. She readily agreed, and her op-ed piece appeared in the Prince William Times on December 2nd. On December 3rd, Superintendent Brandon Byes wrote the county calling the Prince William Digital Gateway the single greatest threat to Manassas National Battlefield Park in nearly 3 decades. On December 10th, the Prince William Watershed Management Branch issued its review of the CPA, citing the threat to water quality and recommending the county's comprehensive plan remain unchanged. I noticed that our county planning office had not solicited reviews from Fairfax County, which is downstream in the Octagon watershed. I alerted Fairfax County officials the same day. On December 14th, the Prince William County archaeologist recommended that land in the Manassas Battlefield Historic District and all land identified by the American Battlefield Protection Program remain zoned as agricultural. The same day, the Prince William Historical Commission wrote that the southern section of the CPA area should keep its existing land use designation or change to parks and open space. I made a number of inquiries with county offices from December 14th on, trying to validate assertions contained in an off-cited May 2021 memo about no land in the overlay district and requirements for a minimum 100-acre parcel size. Department of Economic Development Director Christina Wynn was unable to substantiate these assertions in an email to me on January 4th. There were a number of community engagement meetings in January where residents spouted off about not being heard and developers having an outside influence over the county land use policy. Their concerns were justified on February 8th when it was announced that data center developer QTS had confirmed its interest in the Prince William Digital Gateway. The decision had certainly been in the making for some time, and it's obvious the county was courting data center development outside the designated overlay district in contravention of current county land use policy. These negotiations were conducted behind the backs of our citizens, while the county was insincerely telling its citizens that they were studying the issue. Secret negotiations can be confirmed by a non-disclosure agreement between Christina Wynn and QTS signed on January 12th. Who are our county officials working for? On February 17th, Loudoun County's Transportation and Land Use Subcommittee voted decisively to reject the proposed 2,000-acre data center development just north of the Prince William County line. This sharp reversal indicated Loudoun's souring on its data center experience. On February 22nd, the Prince William County Finance Department submitted its CPA review, which noted that the applicant's revenue claims were greatly exaggerated. On February 23rd, Fairfax County Department of Planning and Development wrote, Fairfax County staff has significant concerns regarding the impacts that will accrue from adoption of this CPA and encourages Prince William County to reconsider the proposal. On March 3rd, I attended the county's community engagement meeting to discuss expanding the data center overlay district. On display was a poster entitled Principles and Strategies. It contained reasonable recommendations for data center siting, which included prioritize areas for planned compatible land uses, minimize negative impact to environmentally sensitive areas, minimize negative impact to public open space and recreational facilities, minimize negative impact to historic and cultural resources. When I asked why those principles were not being applied to the Prince William Digital Gateway, the answer I received is that it is considered a separate project. Shouldn't these principles be applied to all projects? In fact, shouldn't a decision on if and where to expand the overlay district precede a decision on the Prince William Digital Gateway? We have the cart ahead of the horse. An email exchange on March 18th confirmed that the county could not provide any documents which estimate the infrastructure costs associated with this proposal. The applicant's own transportation analysis estimated the cost of widening Pageland Lane alone to be $90.5 million. These costs will result in cash flow to the county being actual negative for several years. If and when the county provides full estimate, it will identify costs that will further reduce any economic return. On March 21st, the Fairfax County Water Authority recommended a rigorous evaluation of the potential impacts to water quality in the Octagon watershed. This is the fourth subject matter expert to raise concerns about the effect on water quality. Industrial facilities belong in industrial areas. Recklessly transforming agriculture and residential areas for industrial use only serves to satisfy the outsized appetites of developers and opportunistic landowners while creating unacceptable environmental risks for the general population. All of us support tax revenue for the county, 57% of which would go to the school system. Developing data centers in the existing overlay district would generate more funding and sooner. Developing data centers in the existing overlay district would not necessitate substantial infrastructure investments, which would offset tax receipts. Developing data centers in the existing overlay district would not threaten Manassas National Battlefield Park, Conway Robinson State Forest, the Octagon watershed and reservoir, and the quality of drinking water from it. There is strong demand for data center development in our area. The county should drive a harder bargain and stop giving away the store by being overly accommodating. There is ample land in the existing overlay district. Those who say otherwise are doing so for their own selfish interests. Thank you. I look forward to answering your questions.
Mr. Kistler, could you indicate if whether the study area that you were referring to corresponds with a particular application that's pending?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question, Denny.
Does the study area that you were referencing in your remarks correspond with the digital gateway application or other applications that have been mentioned by the others?
There's a study area for the digital gateway application, and there's also a study area for the expanding the overlay district.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you all very much. We will turn to questions that were submitted to our website over the last couple of weeks. Could you compare, if you would, the level of current data center development in Prince William County with that of its neighbors, and suggest that whether or not that should be a guide to what we approve here, or are our circumstances such that we should have less than others or more than others?
Are you comparing to like Loudon?
Loudon, Fairfax, whatever you think is a relevant comparison.
Can I ask who that question is for? Is that for anyone to jump in?
That's for all the members of the panel.
I'd like to take a stab at it first, only because I think there's a lot of information that not only do the viewers and citizens don't know, but even like just kind of in this panel as we're talking, so can you kind of just give me that question just straight, just
In Prince William County,
Mhm.
considering more or less or about the same level of data center development as our neighboring counties? And is there an economic need that ours be greater? Are there conflicts with other
Yes.
uses that would
Okay.
suggest we should be less?
Thank you, sir. So I think the first thing is the thing about our opportunity here is we can learn from failed mistakes or mistakes of other counties and localities. But the only one we have to really follow in this model is Loudoun County. And that's because ground zero of data center industry comes out of Loudoun County, because that's where the internet was born. And so when you talk about speed and, as we all have learned and how even our services are delivered to us, it's about speed and connectivity. And so Prince William County is literally the next county with the fastest speed access, if you will, to Loudoun. Doesn't mean that with fiber and the technology and advancements that any other locality behind us or all the way down to the coast, if you will, doesn't have an opportunity, because they do. And that's where you're seeing a lot of development happening just on the other side of us and all the way down to, Norfolk and Virginia Beach. So those opportunities exist. But what we have to look at, for me as my 1/8 on this board, is the opportunity for Prince William County. And that really is what we've been talking about when we said targeted industry, because if we're trying to get a commercial tax base, then what is the commercial side of what we can really do? We can do small business all day, but if we're trying to really grow that in a significant opportunity, that significant opportunity exists with data centers. Now, unless you want to talk commanders, which we're not going to talk on this call, but the opportunity exists when you're looking at how we're trying to really, take away from the residential tax base that we've found ourselves in this situation over, years and unfortunate circumstances to do this. This is what we have for it now. But I just want to say why it exists. And I'm going to say something that I know folks don't want to hear, but the term rural crescent, it was a 1998 tool that my predecessor, John Jenkins, and Kathleen Seafeld, who was the chair of the board at that time, put in place for 20 years. And it was designed to slow development. And development was pushed to the eastern end of the county, which has clearly, you've seen, been developed. And the growth of the county has grown faster than the projections of when this would be another opportunity to have a discussion. But that was a 20-year tool. And the issue that we are in now, which a lot of what you're seeing and some of I'll say the decisions that we've made in prior years, because I served 1 year with the previous board, was that we find ourselves that in 2018, when we should have addressed how we were going to look at the rest of the county, the western end of the county, and develop it, we didn't do that. And it's 4 years later. And now we find ourselves in a situation where we've looked at re-looking at the comp plan, something we should have looked at in 2010. We're looking at land use chapter. We're looking at all this, and we find ourselves doing it now at a time where what we have approved prior to even me being on this board and the 1 year with the previous board has been comp plan amendments. And we've been doing those things one at a time in onesies. All right, I'm going to stop, Denny, so that you can allow, I see hands coming up. But I say that, we should have done this a while ago, and we find ourselves in a place where it seems like the bottleneck of the bottle, everything is trying to push through at once. And honestly, it's been that way for a while. And now it's not that we're pushing this, we're trying to hold this to make it right as it needs to be. But this is not something that this board, this current board, has put ourselves in the situation of. We are now trying to address it.
You'll have a closing statement later.
Yes. All right.
Bill, do you have an answer to the question I posed?
Well, I don't know how I have an answer. I have comments on it. First of all, I think you asked about it came up development Loudoun versus Prince William. Numbers I have, Loudoun has 25 million square feet of capacity right now. They got another 4 million under development. That would give them a total of 29. Prince William has 6.2 right now. They got under development at 27. So we're on pace to exceed Loudoun County with 33, and we've got other things that are even outside the overlay district being considered. So I'm going to agree with Supervisor Angry that there is no plan. I don't know what the target is. Everything seems to be willy-nilly. We seem to approve things as they're slapped in front of us. Everything seems to be a deviation from the plan instead of part of the plan. And that's why I'm saying when we have 3 concurrent proposals right now, and they really ought to go in a sequence instead of being all considered together. As a matter of fact, the Prince William Digital Gateway probably ought to be the last of the 3. First, we ought to have a plan. We ought to say, you know, do we need to expand the overlay district, and where should we do that? And then we see if a project fits into that plan. But we're asked to make a decision on something before we've decided what the future of the county is going to be.
Mr. Weir.
Yeah, I would concur with Bill's numbers with respect to both Loudoun County and Prince William, both in terms of actuals and under development data centers. But I think what everybody has to remember, and this is a hard lesson for people to learn, it took Loudoun County 25 years to get to that number. You're not going to get to that number overnight. You know, if you look down the road from my house, the Amazon data center, that started back in 2015. You know, it took them 2 or 3 years to get the first building done of 3, and 4 years or 5 years to get the second building done. You're seeing a similar circumstance with Gainesville Crossing. None of this stuff's going to happen overnight. None of the revenues are going to come overnight. And then you're going to have to deal with the depreciation over time. I've always sort of likened the data center argument in Loudoun and in Prince William to a Ponzi scheme. Because of the depreciation rate on the computer peripherals tax, the only way to keep increasing your data center revenues year over year is to keep adding data centers and hope that it offsets the loss and depreciation of the existing data centers. Loudoun County found that out the hard way last year. $60 million. You can laugh all you want. $60 million in budget shortfalls. You know, this isn't my first rodeo. And then with all due respect, Supervisor Angry, I've been here since the Rural Crescent started. It was designed to slow development and allow infrastructure improvements on the east. It was so that we didn't invest all of the tax dollars on the west chasing new development. Unfortunately, that continued to happen because the explosive growth, quite frankly, in the last 15, 20 years has not been in the east, it's been in the west. That's why you've got all the high schools, fire stations, and all the other infrastructure improvements, while the infrastructures in the east, particularly in the school system, crumble. You know, there was no set time to the rural crescent. It's a planning tool. And then lastly, with respect to the comp plan, Supervisor Angry, again, the process is what it is. The county has actually followed the statutory process. Comp plans reviewed every 5 years. It has to be under statute. Problem with the county is they do it as a rolling process, where they do 1 chapter or 2 chapters every year, rather than a comprehensive review every 5 years, which means your chapters frequently don't align, especially after chapters are rewritten. I've jumped up and down about this for years. The county needs to get its act together and do a comprehensive comp plan where all of the chapters are considered together, and you're not always chasing your tail to catch up with your last corrections to whatever chapter you did last. Thank you.
Bob, you and I agree on that last statement.
I think we lost our moderator.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Free for all.
It's a free fall.
Free for all.
I'll lead from here on out.
Oh, this is bad.
Now Sergeant Major, you would be the leader.
No, Cynthia, that's Madam President. It's yours now.
You're muted.
Well,
You're on mute, Cynthia.
you're on mute.
Okay, all right.
All right.
I think maybe we lost Denny.
Yeah.
Levan, do you have questions that have come in that we can pose to the panelists?
Well, I do have, yes, I do. And then I have at least one other question here, and I'll put this one out here. How many data centers are considered to be too much? And please provide a general sense of whether Prince William County is ahead or behind other county jurisdiction in data center development and in mitigating their impacts. I think some of the discussion initially kind of spoke to that question, but I don't know who stopped talking last, but let Supervisor Angry and then work our way around to everyone so we can get some feedback on that question. And if you need me to repeat it, I will.
Oh, no, that's good. And thank you for that question because it really goes, I wanted to, I think Bob and Bill really led to that well, and that's that number of data centers. And I can answer that best, and I think I'm the one to answer that because the first official vote that I took on this board was Chairman Stewart bringing back to the board to increase the data center peripheral tax to $4.20 from the $1.25 we were at, or I think it was $1.25 we were at that time, and that was in 2019. And it was based on the conversation he and I said, which I completely agree that we should do that. And then I found out about the resolution we had put in 2019 that the board had put in place that said that the CXO would work with the data center developers to determine what that increase would be over a certain period of time. I'm just paraphrasing the resolution, but that resolution was voted on, adopted, and put in place. And so I have this word that I will live by, which is integrity. And we gave that industry and this county that integrity, that trust that we said we were going to do that. So of course, I could not vote to just change something that we had put in place to say we were going to study for a year. We did do that. I think in last year we did on this board to increase that out over the next 2 years to get to a $2 max, which we're increasing that steadily. And it's not $4.20, but that just at least gives some certainty because at the end of the day, you got to have your word is the last thing that'll stand. And that's something on a leadership level that I ran on. Now, people can, say what you want about it, but I think that's a true thing that we must honor in many areas of what we do. So that was my decision of why I didn't vote for that and what put us that way. Now, because it's so low, yeah, of course, our numbers to have data centers aren't the same as the lower numbers that Loudoun has at the rate that they're getting the money back for the return of those data centers. But again, I think it goes back to my original comment, which is what can we learn from what Loudoun did wrong, or what are they doing that if they could do again, what would they do differently? And we're
Yes,
so I'll stop there.
Well, the question is, how many data centers are too many?
Here's the deal. I don't have an answer to that. And again, I say that my answer was because our rate is so low. Of course, that would to me tell me we're going to have more than what Loudoun has at the rate they're charging $4.20 for their peripherals. And a data center is a football field of computers or servers, and that's where you're getting your money from. So the bang for the buck for a data center, so people can understand, is what is inside those buildings. And we're charging them for all of those servers that sit inside these cabinets on the length of a football field that we are individually charging for that amount. So that's where the money's coming from.
And I'll ask one follow-on question to that, and this is from one of the questions that's come in. What has been the impact of the revenue that has been generated from the existing data centers in PwC? Can anybody?
Okay. All right, I'm gonna have to get that for you because I don't want to just spew out a number, but I'm pretty sure these folks have done their homework to tell you what that number is. So I'll leave that to the folks that have invested time in this and wait to hear back from my budget team to
Okay. I would like to go to Mr. Bob Weir, and then we'll go to Mr. Bill Wright, and then Mr. Kistler.
How many is too many? How many is enough? It depends on what the demand is. I mean, if you drive around the county, there are data centers that are actually constructed with four lease signs on them. If you build 27 million more square feet of data center and there's nobody to populate it, then what do you do? Do you continue to plan to build more? Like I said, it took several decades for Loudoun County to get to that level. And quite frankly, the county's peripheral tax rate historically did not serve as much of a lure to get people to come here instead of Loudoun. Loudoun got them all. Now it's probably more as a result of the latency being less in Loudoun than it is in Prince William County. I guess a nanosecond or two matters to the DoD for some of their stuff, and some of the other cloud servers. I mean, that's changing depending on what the application or who's gonna host the data and what the needs of it is. But I hear this, we have to raise the rate slowly. And I've heard supervisors tell me directly, we can't raise the data center tax, the peripheral tax rate, because the data centers will leave. Go where is what I've always asked. I've talked to the same data center personnel that these people purportedly talk to. And I said, you know what's going to happen if they double the rate or quadruple the rate or triple the rate? And quite frankly, they don't care. It's a rounding error on their balance sheets. You're talking about the largest IT companies in this world.
Okay.
And the peripherals tax that they would pay, or the increase in tax from doubling it in Prince William County, would be absolutely, like I say, not even a rounding error on their books. So if you really want to get some bang for the buck in a hurry, that's the way to do it. And what I've heard is, oh, the data centers will leave. Really? They're going to leave multi-million-dollar, $100 million buildings behind with all of that equipment and then move to a jurisdiction with an even higher rate? Does it make any sense to you? Because it sure doesn't make any sense to me.
All right, Mr.
Due to a power short outage here, and I don't know how we got into the tax rate, but I would like to ask, in light of my recent experience, what is the demand on electrical power associated with these data centers, and what happens when it comes into conflict after a natural disaster with residential users, other businesses, and so forth?
Well, the single the critical path item on building a data center, I know I'm in the middle of building some, is backup generators. You install a ton of backup generators for a data center. So if there is a power outage, the generators kick on, and so they're self-sufficient in the event of a power outage.
And is that the answer, or does anybody else have another perspective?
Could you actually repeat the question? I didn't quite understand it.
What is the competition between existing residential and business users with the new data centers going to create situations in which, after a natural disaster such as a flood, a drought, whatever, that there'll have to be some triage? And if so, how is that handled?
That's not how it works, and that's not how the demand works. You could have 50,000 houses and a couple of commercial properties, and that's not going to equate to the power usage for one data center building. If you look at the load demand letters filed by Amazon, for example, was 120 megawatts, 140 megawatts. Gainesville Crossing is in excess of 300 megawatts. You could power most of the county on that. They are referred to by Dominion Power as bulk data users. And that's why they create a problem outside of the areas where the infrastructure exists from a power standpoint. If you put them in a location that is not conducive to a substation to support them, and virtually every data center is going to require a substation, or data center campus, I should say, is going to require a substation, then you have to run power to them. This is what started the whole fiasco in Prince William County. Corey Stewart, the economic development director at the time, worked out a deal with Amazon in secret in Seattle, and they put the Amazon data center out in Haymarket, where there was no water and power infrastructure, and now we're paying for it. And regardless of how the power gets to them, whether it's above ground or underground, at the end of the day, it's the ratepayers that have to pay for it. It's not the county that pays for it. It's not the data centers that pay for it. It's the ratepayers, and only the ratepayers for Dominion. So essentially, it ends up as another tax on the citizens of Virginia to underwrite those data centers. If you develop data centers to the extent that the county wants to, or plans to within the county, you're looking at multiple power lines and new power lines, because they can't go on the existing power line corridors. For example, the one that runs through the Pageland properties, in order to upgrade that power line, you have to upgrade it from start to finish. There's a problem in that, because that corridor runs down 234, and there's no room for expansion of that corridor, because it's bounded on one side by Norfolk Southern and the other side by VDOT. And they need to expand their easement to increase the power on that trunk route. But the only two people that they can't condemn the property for or of are VDOT and Northern or Norfolk Southern. And neither one of them is willing to give an inch of easement to Dominion Power. So you're creating a circumstance for future problems.
Hey, Danny, if I could just say, I mean, one of the things that has happened and is happening is evolution. Okay, so we've talked about data center, and one of the things has been the fact that it's they use a lot of water, and then they talked about this internal loop. Well, we've been doing studies, to look at how Germany has worked with this. And so if you start talking about, their own internal power supply, how can they create that for themselves? We're not there yet. And to Bob's point, this is not something that's going to happen overnight. I mean, these things are built out over time, and it's going to take years to get there. And every year in the short 3 years I've been in this position, I remember seeing a data center in 2019 and now going in one in 2022 and looking at their air cooling system and their innovative, closed loop water system and utilizing these internal systems they have. So they're listening to the public. They're doing the things that they need to do to satisfy this one requirement, which is the fact that we are living in the technological age and data is very important. Even this call is being recorded and stored somewhere. And so this is something we're living in a time of. It creates jobs for people, it creates opportunities, and it's less than what is talked about with traffic, schools, all this, folks coming in and what are we going to do for all this? So it's there, but the question is, how do we do it right? Again, it goes back to what can we learn about either another county's mistakes or where we are in the opportunity to get this right. And I'll just leave it there.
We have another question that's come in. If not data centers, what industry should the county target to increase the commercial tax base?
And I'll go first because I mean I'm on this board here. But what do we have? I mean, since COVID, we've looked and saw office space diminish. And so now we know that folks can work from home. The federal government is literally on a 2-day work schedule from home and 3 days in the office. Some are more than that. If you're doing that, then again, your data is going somewhere. We are increasing capacity for data storage somewhere. But if not data centers, then what? I mean, we're bringing a Whole Foods to Neabsco districts. That's a great, people love that. It's a grocery store. It's going to create that opportunity for a new industry. It is commercial based. We're going to bring in some restaurants again. These are things, but it's the same thing that is what we currently do. What that industry looks like now, I mean, it really is data driven. And so I can't really give you an answer other than what other great Trader Joe's. I mean, what else is there to look at? So until that comes an opportunity, distribution centers for Amazon. Yes.
Supervisor Angry, aren't you popping a football stadium down there by you for the Redskins?
I can neither confirm nor deny those allegations. Kistler.
I think we need more dense packed gated communities.
Which means?
Well, I mean, the rural crescent from a landowner perspective was a downzoning of the property such that they basically, all they could do, the only by right development was 10-acre McMansion lots. And I think that's a bad idea. And if that's what everybody is left to, if this proposal is rejected, then that's what you're going to get. You're going to get 10-acre McMansion lots because the farmers aren't farming anymore. I mean, they're still growing hay for us, but that's it. They're not making any money.
Commercial tax base wouldn't include the residential development you're speaking of. Is anybody have anything to add on what commercial tax base we should pursue? All right. I heard Mr. Wright say earlier that this is not a debate over whether we whether there's a place for data centers in Prince William County, but where is that place? We have a current overlay district. To what extent do you believe that that district needs to expand?
Is that a question to me?
Questions to anybody?
Oh, well, I'll take it first since I said it. Whether it needs to expand, I think is something that's being looked at right now. But like I said, the planning process is out of sequence. We're asked to consider a 2,100 acre industrial development in a rural area before we've decided whether we need to expand the overlay district. By my calculations, there's a minimum of 1,304 acres of usable land in the overlay district that we're not using right now for data centers. I don't know why that is. Why we aren't building the data center overlay district out first before we explore moving outside it, or why we don't complete the study to see what the best, if we need to expand it in the first place and where that expansion would go. Why we don't complete that study prior to considering the Prince William Digital Gateway.
Someone else?
Well, my response to that is because it's a good idea and the county's zoning policies are flexible enough to consider things out of sequence.
Well, it's a good idea as a rather subjective comment. Excuse me, Bob, go ahead.
No, I would
I'll
take
grant you
issue
that.
with that. I would take issue with that. I mean, the whole reason the overlay district was created was to stop or create the potential for further Amazon situations and have some likelihood of where things were going to be put without requiring additional infrastructure costs or needed infrastructure that the public would have to pay for. What we have seen increasingly in recent months, recent years, is that staff and developers are going outside of the overlay, even when there's no particular reason to it, simply because the greenfield space is cheaper than developing brownfields or stuff within the overlay. I would argue some people are land banking it. I mean, look no further than the intersection of 55 and Kidharpin. You've already got 2 huge data centers approved, and now a third one coming back in April. At some point in time, there's not going to be enough demand to meet what's being approved, and then it's going to be a race to figure out who builds first and gets what little is left of the demand. And then you get to the point where, well, now we don't have a demand for data centers. What do we do with our land? And then you repurpose it, reproffer it, rezone it, do another CPA. I mean, we've seen that's the history of this county. Developers come in, they ask for one thing, they promise you the moon, and you get something else. The best example is Greater South Market. Walt Scallucci came in, promised us, this is going to be the next Tyson's Corner. You're going to have fine dining and high-end retail. What do we get at the end of the day after four rezonings of the original rezonings and multiple property changes? We got a Walmart, a Little Caesars, and a data center. And then as part of that, another part of that is across I-66, part of the same application was supposed to be office and support services for the hospital, and all of that was proffered. Now you want to change it to high density housing. So, here we are yet again, taking commercial out and replacing it with high density housing. The county has no direction. It just flips and flops. And there's no accountability for anybody, for anybody in the planning office. Quite frankly, nobody on the board seems to take accountability for it either.
We've had a number of discussions here that mention the national park at Manassas Battlefield, but I understand that this issue is also relevant to the Prince William Forest Park that is down in the Potomac District. Can anybody like to shed light on what the impacts of that are on, for example, Quantico Creek or other?
Sir, and now I will chime in on that question, but can I answer that? Can I respond to the previous question and just with one quick statement, which is this county has a shortage of housing. And I will give, and someone commented in the box that I was disrespecting Supervisor John Jenkins and Chairman Kathleen Seafield, both honorable in my comments about what the rural crescent was and it intended for. That is not a dispute debatable. It is not disrespecting them. It is a statement of fact. And I respect them both. And John Jenkins is legendary and a hero of mine with his military service and his community service. I will say this county has had a shortage of housing forever. And that's where we are. And that's why that's why your property rates have gone up. And that's why you see that increase in that. So we need more housing, more variety of housing, more equitable housing in Prince William County. It is a fact of matter. And the only way you get affordability is with density. And you've seen that on the eastern end. That is a fact of statement for the western end of the county. This is a discussion that we're going to have next. We're talking about a commercial tax base and data centers now. We're going to be talking about housing next. I hope it's a welcoming discussion because it is a fact of matter that one of the solutions to why our property rates are so high is because we don't have a variety of homes. And I'm talking everything from apartments to townhouses to condos to single family homes. And that is one of the reasons why we're in the situation we're in now.
Very interesting topic, but not the one that we advertised our program would be about. Mr. Wright?
Yeah, I just want to add, I agree with Supervisor Angry. I see all this interest in, we have a shortage of housing, but we're not building housing. We're talking about building data centers. If we need housing, why aren't we building housing? I don't get it.
Can I respond to that if I could?
That's it.
Because certain elected officials chose commercial over residential. And again, no disrespect to even my fellow board members, it's just a fact of the statement. We find ourselves where we are now because data centers brought less traffic, no school increase, none of that. And that was something that was a decision made. No matter how you slice it up, it's what the decision was made on that end. And that's why you see that increase over there now. The fact of the matter is we should have been talking residential more because that opportunity should be afforded across one Prince William.
It's a very interesting discussion, but I would like to ask again,
Yes.
what is the reasoning for locating a data center next to national parks at each end of our county? Are those particularly appropriate locations for a data center such that that's, or is it that's where we've received requests?
And if I could, I actually, Bill, you know what, Bill's hand came up first, so I'm gonna let him. Not gonna.
I'm fast on the draw, fast on the draw. And I'll give you your time back, Victor, but I think, Denny, you asked the question, is it a great idea to put a data center next to a national park? And it's no, not in the case of Manassas National Battlefield and not in the case of Prince William Forest Park. It's not a good idea. There just happens to be a vacant parcel land. And this goes back to the county's land use policy. They're just willy-nilly. Somebody puts in an application to put something somewhere where it doesn't make sense, and we throw it on the table instead of rejecting it out of hand. I don't know why we do that. I'm new to this game, but it mystifies me.
Victor, you wanted to?
Yeah. And here's the deal. I'll say this to that question. I am not interested in putting data centers all over this county anywhere. I know we're doing this study to be county-wide and where would they fit best. For me, and that corridor going there, it's all about that infrastructure that Dominion had created in 2012 for that power opportunity. And the second piece I'll say to that, the landowners agreed to that. I didn't come to them. This board didn't come to them and say, do you have this opportunity? It's an opportunity we have to look at now. We didn't present that for them. They brought it to the board and the county, and we have to look at it. I'm not saying that's a done deal. I'm saying we put our staff in place to go out and do the work and come back and tell us, is this an opportunity? And so that's what we're waiting to hear. This conversation is brought on because of a lot of other interests to bring it up. And so I'm staying the course of the lane that I put them in, and I'm not, again, pressuring my staff, and neither is this board. And if they are, this board is, I want to know about it so I can have that conversation with board members, because we should not be.
Danny, it's not appropriate, both from a historic standpoint and an environmental standpoint. And Supervisor Angry, I would challenge you to do this. The county has an obligation by statute to manage TMDLs, total and maximum daily loads. The county has a board designated to review the applications for concordance with that, the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Area Review Board. This board has not appointed anybody to it, and it has no members since 2019. So the board's not doing it. By that, I mean the commission. Board of County Supervisors isn't doing the review, and staff's not doing the review. And by and large, the county as a whole, when it comes to water review, especially for the TMDLs, is in violation of the statute. You're just lucky the DEQ hasn't bothered to hassle you yet, but I suspect that's coming.
Well, thank you for that. I will look into that.
Last question, I would like to ask you about tax revenues, not changes in the tax rate, but the Prince William County Finance Department on March 10th stated that they envisioned 10 million in tax revenue in project year 1 growing to 400 million a year by project year 20. What are your thoughts on the reasonableness of this forecast? Is it realistic?
I'll take a stab at it, and I would say no, because it's based on a flat progression, not factoring in depreciation and not factoring in the additional costs of the county. I mean, you just added 24 staff to deal with nothing but data centers, both at the development services level and in the financial services office. So there's what, let's say it's 20 people. That's what, $2 million? No, more than $2 million a year just in staff costs, and that's on the low end. Yeah, no, it's a simple logarithmic number, but it probably has no basis in reality, and it's probably significantly lower than that. And it also assumes full build out. If you look at the other developments around here, Amazon, Gainesville Crossing, take your pick. Nobody develops all at once. It develops over a period of years. Your depreciation schedule then stretches out from building to building. They're not the same. They're not all done the same. And the industry is changing the way that they're updating and refreshing their equipment. And I think the other thing that you have to keep in mind is, and we just saw this from the General Assembly this year, the General Assembly is tinkering with the tax rates, specifically for data centers. And the data center lobby has their in with them. Our own Senator McKike carried the bill this year. It didn't necessarily impact Prince William County very much because our method of assessing the data center's real property was pretty much in concordance with what the state was mandating at the General Assembly level, but it sure gave Loudon a smack in the face, and probably a couple of other jurisdictions. And I'm sure that you're going to see similar legislation in the out years, reducing the tax burden on data centers. That's just how it works in Richmond.
Tim, you want to comment on that? You were talking about the revenue potential earlier.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I cited the real property tax, because that's the stable one that doesn't depreciate. I mean, every year, as it's just like your personal, your residence. Every year, the tax assessor says it's worth more, and if the mill rate doesn't change, your taxes go up. If every year they assess it higher and the mill rate does change, typically the mill rate goes up, so your taxes go up all the more. So the real property taxes generated by these projects will be significant, and some of the costs, like in some of the questions and some of the comments previously, infrastructure, like the cost of expanding Pageland Lane, that's not a public expense. That's paid for by the developers. Every project I've ever built, I've had to build all of the roads. I've built every single road that I've ever touched. Sometimes a mile down the road, you have to put in a traffic light because you've impacted it. The other thing is with regard to the substations, you have to pay for the substations. I've got a substation under construction right now in Pulaski County. So, these things aren't passed on to the public. They're paid for by the developers.
I would call BS on that, because in order to build a road, if you don't own the entire frontage, you've got to condemn the parcels along the road frontage. So who pays for the condemnation? It's sure not the developer. It's the county that has to do that, and the county taxpayer that has to accrue the expense. As far as the substations go, substations are built by Dominion, at least in Dominion's area. Now, if you're building down in Southwest, you might be dealing with Allegheny, and they might have a different setup. I doubt it. But all of Dominion's infrastructure is paid for and built by Dominion, because they use it to their benefit on their balance sheets, and then they pass it on to the ratepayers.
But we have to stroke a big, huge check to them. I mean, every transformer you get from them, you have to buy it from them.
That big, huge check doesn't cover the entire cost. In fact, it doesn't cover very much of it at all, to be honest with you, at the end of the day. I've seen the numbers. I've litigated this. I mean, we've gone round and round with the load engineers and Dominion's financial staff for years.
And so where on Pageland Lane is there somebody who's going to have to be condemned? That's ridiculous.
Do you own the entire length of Pageland Lane road frontage?
I think the entire frontage of Pageland from Sudley to Route 29 is under contract.
Okay.
So
Is it
there's
under contract by one person who's going to do the development?
well,
We'll see.
two.
We'll see.
Oh, I know, but you just can't make these broad statements that every developer knows is not true. And say, oh, it's because I
Do you know
said
how
it.
many developers have sat and lied to my face in a public hearing about something that they know is inherently false? I mean, I'm
I
not going
don't
to get
know.
into I'm not going to get into it with you in this forum, but if there's an inherent distrust between the public and developers in Prince William County, it's well earned.
Okay, well, we've had a very lively discussion. I want Cynthia, if you agree, I think it's time to turn to closing statements from our panelists. And you're on mute, so I don't know whether you're agreeing or not.
I'm agreeing, Denny. I think it's 8:30, and yes, we'd like to hear closing statements from each of our panelists.
So Supervisor Angry, let's let you, we'll do the same order we did previously. You have the first 2 minutes. Is that the correct amount, Cynthia? Did you specify an amount of time for closing statements?
2 minutes each, please.
Yeah, I'll be quick. And I just want to first thank you for putting this on, Cynthia, and Denny and Sherry. And Denny, thank you for moderating it. I had really no expectations of how this was going to go. But I will say for the viewers and for this panelist, we are here discussing this data center opportunity in Prince William County. I was the one, and I'll put myself out there to tell you, I directed staff to look at expanding the overlay district, not for reasons of there not being land left in the current, for reasons of the opportunities that existed after 2018, which expanded the western end of the county. And I think that is a right thing to do as a leader in this county, an elected official, looking out for 482,000 people for an opportunity that can exist for all. And that being, how do I reduce that residential tax base, getting that commercial tax base to be where it needs to be so that we can have services in this county paid for without relying on the backs of homeowners that we need to happen. And so that was my intent behind it. And I will say that to this group, in no way are we pressuring staff. We are here because it has been concerns of all the people, and we've developed new groups behind it. And that's all great because that's what we should do as citizens and of the United States and voting people. So I'm happy that we're having these discussions. In the end of the day, the data and information that comes back will allow us to make the best decision we can. And I'll end by just saying this. There is no such thing as a right decision, but there is definitely a such thing as a wrong decision. And that decision is not making one. And so we're going to make a decision on what we have to do going forward for the best interest of 482,000 citizens of Prince William County. Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you very much, Victor. Bob?
Yeah, Danny, I'll keep it short. I just want to thank the committee once again for inviting me to speak. Most people don't want to hear me talk, at least most of the time. Yeah, I think I've said enough on the issue tonight. One interesting thing I gleaned, Supervisor Angry asserted that they had essentially negotiated with the data center industry for what their tax rates were going to be in the out years. And I'll just love to volunteer my services to sit down with Supervisor Angry and negotiate what the residential tax rates will be for the next 20 years so that we don't get hit with 24% increases in our real estate taxes year over year, like we're experiencing out here on the West End. So if you want to talk about a graduated scale of taxes out here on the West End, I'll be more than happy to talk to you on behalf of the rest of the residents out here. Thank you.
All right, that was a record brevity. I believe that Tim is next.
I'll just reiterate my point that as Victor, how many residents? I thought it was 430. Now you just said
482,000.
Wow.
Business data.
Okay. Diversification of tax base. I mean, this is an amazing opportunity that has shown up, and it's all because UUNet created the internet right up the road. It's a unbelievable opportunity for the county, and the county should not miss this opportunity.
All right, another extraordinarily brief statement. Bill, what do you?
I might be a little longer, but I think that opportunity exists elsewhere besides in rural areas. I think a lot of people that are watching this tonight may not realize that this digital gateway is not the county's idea. This is a private business proposal that is a deviation from the comprehensive plan. That's why it's called a comprehensive plan amendment. And what Bob and I are talking about, and not a decision about no data centers, you know, it's not a decision of data centers or no data centers. It's a decision about the most appropriate location for data centers so that we can reap those economic benefits. And anything, if you put them where in the overlay district or where there's industrial area where they're sited to go, less infrastructure investments means more dollars, more tax dollars sooner without environmental damage. And so that's what we want to do. And we want the supervisors to make the most informed decision for the benefit of all of those 482,000 citizens. Thank you.
Toward that end, we very much appreciate all the panelists who volunteered to come before us tonight and share information that will allow us to be part of that discussion. Cynthia, shall I turn it back to you?
Denny, thank you so much. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us tonight. It certainly has been a very lively and highly informative sessions as we anticipated it would be. But thank you for the time you've taken to come and be with us tonight. We appreciate it very, very much. And I'm sure this is not the last discussion we're going to have on this topic.
Not likely.
We look forward to future discussions with you. And as I said in opening comments, our goal here is not to persuade our citizens one way or another, but to provide them with the most expert perspectives we can so that they can decide how they feel about further development of data centers here in Prince William County. So I know that you folks are busy. We thank you for your immense contribution tonight, and hopefully we'll get together soon and talk about this again. And no doubt we have many more conversations that will need to be had.
My pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let me just say again to our audience in general, thank you for being with us tonight. We once again would like to welcome new members, Michael Artson, John DeBell. Tonight, we realize that Supervisor Angry, who's been a long-term member, is renewing his membership. And we thank Tim Kistler for also signing up to be a member. We invite the rest of you to do the same. Do that by sending your check to Post Office Box 1415, Manassas, Virginia, zip code 20108, and that's to the Prince William Committee of 100. Before we all go, please give me just a moment to thank folks who helped make this kind of forum come to reality for us. So first and foremost, we want to thank Denny. We want to thank Denny Doherty, who's continued to serve as our program chairman for the length of time that I've been president. Denny has done just a spectacular job of helping to guide us with the various topics, meaningful topics that we want to present to our residents. Also, Martha Henley, I want to offer a special thanks to. Martha was the coordinator for this session and did a marvelous job of finding you all who are speakers for us to come and enlighten us on this subject. Thank you so much for all of that. One other group I want to thank is our questions committee. You may not be aware that we have such a thing, but we do have a group of men and women who come together and put together a viable set of questions that we pose to you. And that questions committee was led by Dr. Jack Kuyumjan. And Jack served along with LaVann Griffith, who is here with us tonight, Martha Henley, Ken Hosen, and who am I forgetting? Jonathan Way. Jonathan Way. Thank you all so much for your assistance in making this program a reality tonight.
Cynthia, quick point of clarification. So what you were saying is Supervisor Angry's account was in default?
No, Mr. Kistler, I would not dare say that. We have just recently reminded him that we want him to come back to us, okay?
Announce our next program.
Recording.
Yes, just one moment. Thank you for Denny for reminding me of that. Next up for the Committee of 100 on April 21st, we're going to be offering a forum on the critical race theory and its impact on Prince William Public Schools. We hope that you will be with us for that. And all of this that I'm saying to you with regard to upcoming programs is available on our website, pwc100.org. In addition to the April 21st program, on May 19th, we hope to offer a program which we're calling the Committee of 100 People's Choice Awards. And in that, we're going to recognize citizens or residents of Prince William County, both on the East End and the West End, for excellent contributions to the Prince William County community. We look forward to that and hope that you all will be with us. And those of you who are not members, come on down. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and good night to you.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.
Great job, guys.